Welcome to another edition of Suzy's Las Vegas. I have another continuation in my series of shows with Ken Walther. He's here today. Hi, Ken. How are you?
Hi, Suzy. I'm fine, thank you.
We're going to pick up where we left off last week. Sounds like a plan, doesn't it?
You got it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about what happened when you were back in Burundi.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, to refresh,
Yeah.
I went down there at the request of the agency to do a special assignment in Africa, and which I reluctantly agreed to, and then I found out that they were in the middle of a genocide down there. And so I still went anyway because they had some other things for me to do. But
Right.
we weren't involved with the genocide, of course. It was a tribal thing between the Tutsi and the Hutu.
We have, I think Rick has some pictures of what the tribe looks
Yeah.
like, or what a native
Yeah,
looks
well,
like. Maybe you can put that up while we're talking.
those are pygmies, actually. That's
Okay.
not what they were. They were in Zaire.
Were they similar to that, though?
Negative. Those little pygmies were the enemy of the gorilla, mountain gorillas. We'll get to those later.
Okay, all right.
But the Watusi are very tall people,
Okay,
and they were the ruling minority class of both Rwanda and Burundi.
oh, wow.
And so there was always a class problem with that, and the tribal hatred between the two also was evident as they killed
Yeah,
so many people.
yeah.
And
Well, there was,
So
what,
the-
150,000
150,000 when I was in Burundi.
that were killed?
Yeah.
Wow.
And the thing is, the way that they got the people to turn themselves in, this was in 1971, 72, they would have police and gendarmerie go through the villages, basically huts, and they would look at who had a tin roof or who had a tin door, and they would say, okay, and they'd write his name down, and then they'd turn it into the police, the commissariat, and they would post their names written. So the people would go see if their name was on the list, and if they could read, that's not good.
No. Better to play dumb, huh?
Yeah, or
I
not-
know nothing.
Or not show up anyway. They don't have any computers, remember?
Yeah.
So they were locked up, and then at night they
Yeah.
would start exterminating them. And I don't want to get too gruesome or
Exterminating
black, but
them?
yeah.
Oh, ouch.
But and ammunition was in short supply, so they did it with very. They used machetes, they used
Yeah.
hammers, they used nails, they did all kinds of stuff.
Uh-huh.
And then in the mornings, you could see the UN had donated dump trucks down there for sanitation,
Uh-huh.
and they would be piling bodies in these dump trucks, and the dump trucks would go down to either dump them in the Lake Tanganyika, or they would put them in mass graves that they had dug. And so that's the way. But you could see that in the mornings they were going to dispose of the bodies, and of course there's no press down there, no TV. No real communications, although we had representatives from a lot of countries down there.
Wow.
We had Italians, we had Germans, we had Belgians, we had Russians, we had Chinese, we had all kinds of representation, and of course, a few of us Americans.
Well, to give our audience an idea, Ken, exactly what year was this, or when was this?
This was started in, the genocide started in about late 70,
Okay,
and I got down there in 71.
okay.
And so that's a time frame. But the Burundis and the Tutsis have been fighting since the turn of the century.
Wow.
And under different colonizations. The Belgians colonized the place, and they favored the Tutsi. Don't ask me why, but they did. And so the Tutsi were the ruling class, and they would normally get some Hutus to tend to their longhorn cattle.
Okay.
I think I've got a picture somewhere of a longhorn cattle
Okay.
that the Tutsis had, and they would put the,
There it
there's
is.
one.
Yeah.
These things were pretty cool. And they would get the Hutus to tend their herd, and then if they did a good job, and hopefully they would get a calf so they could raise their own little longhorn.
Yeah. Well,
Because cattle were a form of wealth there. It's kind of like if we had 10 Cadillacs, they had 10 longhorns. So,
that's pretty good.
yeah, and then you could eat them later.
Yeah. Who knows? It's the gift that keeps giving.
That's right.
Oh, my God. Well,
So the difference between the Tutsis and the Hutus were physically, too. The Tutsis were more like the Hamitic tribes from the northern part, like Ethiopia and Somalia.
Yeah.
They had slender noses. They were tall and slender people. And the Hutus are more of the Negroid-looking ones from the Congo-looking or Uganda and even the ones down in some in South Africa,
Oh, wow.
the Zulu. So they're easy to tell apart. But in one instance, the president, when I was down there in Burundi, was a Tutsi, and his name was Michel Bujumbura.
Okay.
And he was a short guy, but he had big mutton chop mustache and everything, and he had to
Yeah.
have his picture at the top of every door so that everyone would look up to him. So the people had never seen him in person, they think he's a giant. So
Was
that
he
was
a
the
little
way,
guy?
yeah, so looking up at his picture over every door.
Yeah.
So Michel Bujumbura was a short Tutsi, but his brother was a real killer, and he was a tall one. He was a big guy. I had him over to the house a couple of times for beers.
Yeah.
You don't want to mess with him.
No.
And
Better to keep him on the good side.
yeah. But that's the
Wow.
difference. It's basically the height and the features.
Wow, that is amazing.
Yeah.
Well, like your chain of events, so it was 1972 was,
Yeah, that's when genocide was already going on in 72. And then if we jump historically into 88, there was another big genocide. And then, of course, everyone's heard of Rwanda because it was
yeah,
publicized.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And Rwanda was a pretty nice country. The Hutus were majority there in population, but the Tutsis still were the ruling class.
wow,
So when the Hutus got fed up, they started killing them. And they killed actually 800,000 people
Wow.
in Rwanda. I wasn't in on that,
Ooh.
fortunately.
Wow.
But it was terrible that these two countries, which used to be one kingdom, the kingdom of Rwanda, Urundi, used to be pretty peaceful. I mean, the king didn't put up with any stuff. He was kind of like a Saddam Hussein.
Oh, right.
If you got out of
That's it. My way or the highway, is that what you're trying to tell me?
Yeah,
Wow.
knock that off. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they've always been. I believe that tribalism is the most sensitive thing in the world. Every tribe will be at odds with another tribe, even if they're very close to each other physically.
It's
or
always
whatever.
trying to, who's on the
Yeah,
top, right?
Trying to be who's on top, who's the
Yeah.
ruler.
Yeah.
So tribalism's not a good thing. We can see that even today.
Oh, my God, yeah.
I mean, if you want to call it the tribalism of football teams.
Yeah,
I mean, if I'm for the whatevers and you're for the not whatevers,
yeah,
you can get violent.
yeah, yeah.
So that's crazy, but that's
Yeah.
the way it is.
Yeah, wow. That's totally amazing.
Yeah. So
Well, the similarities and causes of so you have ethnic tensions and you have political instability.
right, the difference in Kenya, which is a pretty civilized country, and you've been there, you know
Yes.
it's a pretty nice country.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
The Brits ruled that, and the Brits instilled like a parliamentary system there, and of course, they speak English in Kenya, they speak French and Kiswahili in other countries.
Right.
But the Kenyans were basically we would go to Kenya. I would make a trip there every several weeks on a courier run from the embassy, and we could get packaged milk.
Oh, my God,
You
you
know,
could get
the
good
Tetra
stuff.
Packs
Yeah,
that didn't need refrigeration, and so
Yeah.
we'd bring back goods like that,
Yeah.
and other things that we couldn't get in Burundi, which was just about anything.
wow.
So, but Kenya was, they had good hotels. They do even better now. And I don't know how long ago you were there, but
We were in, last year, we
Yeah,
were in,
must have been
Steve and I
pretty
were in
nice.
Africa. Yeah, I loved
Yeah,
it. I'd
yeah.
go back in a heartbeat.
You
I
bet.
loved South Africa, though,
Oh,
Cape Town area and all that.
South Africa is pretty cool,
Yeah.
and especially their wines.
Oh, yes, I love the wineries. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, when I was in South Africa, I just took several weeks off and went down on a tourist thing by myself.
Uh-huh.
Started in the tip down in Cape Town. And then I was going to drive up to Durban. And the South African said, well, don't stop in the Transkei. And I said, what's the Transkei? It's Trnskei, if anyone wants to look it up.
Yeah.
It's a wild area. It's independent from South Africa even. And there's the roads are completely different there. There's no fences to keep the animals from going onto the highway. And there's wild baboons down there. These
Really?
fierce things you've seen with the big teeth and the red butts. But these
Yeah.
baboons, they said, if you ever have a flat tire driving through the Transkei, just drive it flat, because you get out and the baboons may attack you, and there's been people harmed by that. So
Wow.
Fortunately, I didn't have a flat, and I went through Transkei and went on to Durban.
Well, the volcanoes, where are they?
The
Ken?
volcanoes were in Zaire,
Okay.
and that was pretty neat. That's
I
after
believe
the,
we have some photographs of
yeah,
the
we
volcanoes
could probably show
too.
that
They're
one.
yeah.
That one
Yeah,
is
it's beautiful.
that's a fairly peaceful one. That's Karasimbi, and then there's a live one near Ngongo, and what you have to do is trek up to the top of that during the daytime,
Wow.
and you have a couple of bearers bringing some things with you, like charcoal and stuff, so you can actually overnight up there on the top.
Oh, really?
And it gets cold because it's pretty high. I forgot exactly how high it is. It might be on the photo somewhere. But at any rate, you trek up there and plan to spend the night. And now there's probably huts up there. This time we just had
Probably.
like a bedroll.
Yeah.
And we had some MREs, military rations, that although you can get those anywhere nowadays, but put them on the coals and let the little tins warm up. And then things boil at a lower temperature at higher altitudes.
That's true.
So you can
Yeah.
pick them up with your hands. And so I was
Yeah.
going to be macho and pick up the little warm tin and put it aside and think, oh, that's pretty cool, you know. So the natives are watching me. There was a few up there. And they saw this and weren't too impressed because they went and reformed the coals with their bare hands.
Oh, my God.
And we had one guy had a
Yeah.
little fire going up there too.
Yeah.
And one of the trekkers that went up with us,
Yeah.
they were traveling barefooted. I wore out a pair of tennis shoes going up there. It's not hard trekking,
Yeah.
but they were shredded. This guy was climbing up with bare feet.
Wow. Wow.
And then at night he wanted to hang his feet over the fire to warm them up.
Wow.
So they're pretty tough. They're pretty sturdy people.
Wow.
So that was got a chance to go to a couple of volcanoes that were excellent.
Well, after, the massacres, Ken, I just wanted to touch on that again. After the massacres, what happened?
Well, they quit killing each other. Let me go back one
Yeah,
more thing with
please go back.
when the Hutus were being massacred. Some of the Hutus had good positions down there. One was the postmaster, and he had all the keys to all the post office boxes and everything like that. Well, when they killed him and tossed him in the lake, there went the keys. There went everything. So, they didn't plan it out. So what we would do sometimes, this is kind of unauthorized, and we didn't have really permission to do this, but we'd pay for a lorry, a truck, to help these guys get away into the next country, into Rwanda, or we'd
Sure.
have them go somewhere else where they wouldn't be subject to being murdered. And a lot of them, that's not our job down there. It's just that it's a humanitarian thing. If you can help these people who are marked for execution, it can't hurt your karma. So that's what we did. And the Hutus were nice people. I mentioned before in the big house that I had there, in the back there, the Belgians had stables built, and they were concrete little rooms. I had about a dozen little rooms back there, and I had the Hutus hiding up there. And, Americans and Westerners don't really differentiate. They're just people that are in a country, and they're nice people, and they
Sure.
help you, and you help them.
Right.
And so that's what you've got to do. So, although that was definitely not our charter. Now, I'll tell you a little side story. I didn't bring this up before, that we had an ambassador down there at the time that when the killings were breaking out, he said, well, I'm going to protest this. I'm going to go back to the States. Yeah, right. He protested by getting himself out of the fray. And he left the guy, the number 2 at the embassy, the deputy chief of mission, they call him.
Right.
He had been through a terrible thing in Lubumbashi in Zaire, where they caught him and all the Americans there, I think there were 6, that were taken out every day, and they made him eat the flag. And they put him in front of a trench and blindfolded him, and one would walk behind and he'd shoot one to fall into the trench, and the others were waiting. Is this my day or
God.
not? So he'd been through a lot, and I had all the respect for this guy. His name is Mike Hoyt, and he wrote a book called For the Love of Mike. If you want to read some interesting stories, The Love of Mike is the name of the book.
How horrible.
And he survived that. But then when the ambassador left in protest of the killings, they left Mike in charge, and Mike then was having all these flashbacks to
Well, sure.
who could
Yeah.
blame him. So, fortunately, the station is different from the embassy. Our chief of station has actually a rank as high as an ambassador, and he kept us all pretty calm. And of course, he relied on all of us to
Wow.
do the best we could. And this was in addition to whatever nefarious things that we were trying to do down there on the government side.
Wow.
So, just remember, some of the people that went through the things down there had more of a background in PTSD than others of us who, although some had both been in the military and so on, we had never experienced being subjected to being shot in the back of the head from a ditch.
Oh, my God.
So anyway, that's a story I didn't even have written down to talk about
Wow.
today, but you reminded me of it.
Yeah, yeah. When you think about everything that you've been through, I mean, this has to bring up a lot of memories for you too. I
It
mean,
does.
because
That's why I enjoy doing
yeah, yeah, for sure. Wow. Well, outside of East Africa, what other countries did you visit? And did you do any safaris? I mean, I like the gorillas and,
Yeah.
all the cool stuff,
They're
all
cool
the
little
animals.
people, the
Yeah, I'm
gorillas.
sure Rick has a few pictures of
Yeah,
the
the
animals.
picture of the mountain gorillas, there's several places
Yeah,
that
I love
there's
those.
what you call a silverback.
Yeah.
When a gorilla gets to be about 13 to 15 years old, they go gray, kind of like us old guys.
Yeah.
And they're normally the silverback is the leader of this little pack, his little tribe up there.
Yeah.
And until he gets ill, and then he's challenged, and a younger gorilla may take him out.
Wow.
And that's what they look
He's
like
not
when they're
happy,
mad.
that
He
one.
hadn't been to a dentist in a while either.
No.
But the gorillas are fairly calm and tame unless you mess with them, unless you scare them
Yeah.
or do something. So when we were up there,
Yeah.
we were led actually by a Belgian who had been living in the area, and he knew the gorillas by name.
Oh, wow.
And to find them, because he didn't live with them,
Would you just call them and they'd come?
well, when you found them,
Uh-huh.
you had to go find them first. So in order to find them, we had to use as guides pygmies.
Okay.
And they're cool little people. But the thing is, the gorillas hate them. But they know how to find them.
Okay.
So they would lead us up to where the gorillas are. That's a typical
that's
little
a
pygmy.
little pygmy. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they
Wow.
they like to take us close, but then they would, when they could get within, you might say, scent of the gorillas, they would leave. Because if the gorilla saw them, they would chase them and throw them. And so they didn't like that. So they,
No, I'm sure I wouldn't like being thrown either.
No, so that's how we would find the gorillas. And
Yeah.
once we got to them, the Belgian guy knew their names, and he would call them and calm them down because they trusted him.
Yeah.
And I remember one time we were up there, and there was an Italian guy with us, and he was waving his hands and talking and jabbering away, and then pissed off one of the big gorillas, who started running at him. Well, if a gorilla runs at you, you just kind of hunker down and
Yeah.
pretend like you're not there. And they may run over you or they may not.
Yeah.
But the Italian guy, he ran up this big rock.
Oh, no.
And so the gorilla grabbed him by the leg and pulled him down and bit him on the butt. And it's funny unless it happens to you.
Yeah. Can
But
you imagine the teeth marks, man? Did
Well,
he take a piece of the flesh?
It
Yeah.
bled pretty bit. So
Yeah.
we put him in a Jeep and sent him
Yeah.
back, and we stayed
Wow.
up there. But don't mess with the gorillas.
Oh, God, no.
And at that time, I wish I'd have had a digital camera at those time, but I just had a 35 millimeter camera, which clicked a lot. And then we had 8 millimeter movie cameras, which buzzed a lot.
Yeah.
And so I do have some shots of the gorillas, but that noise disturbs them. They don't like that. So, but it's an experience if you get a chance. Now, I was looking online. There's a lot of places advertising going to see the gorillas, and
Yeah.
a lot of people heard of Jane Goodall,
Yeah. Yeah.
She lived with the
absolutely.
apes.
Yeah.
and I actually had a chance to meet her.
Did you?
Yeah, we invited her.
What was she like?
She was nice. She was
Yeah.
kind of a hippie, but that's okay. She
Well, she knew what was she doing.
yeah,
That's
well,
good.
that's the thing that some of us had a problem with, is being too close to the gorillas might
Yeah.
not be good. But she was very adventurous and very brave to study them, and she's written some good books. So Jane Goodall, if you haven't read up on her, you may she's getting up there now too.
I've taken a look at some of her articles
Yeah.
and that. I mean, it's quite interesting.
Great
It really
photos.
is. Especially after I went to Africa, I got involved in looking at everything I could. And then when we talked about this series with you, I thought, we got to do this. This is awesome.
Yeah, it was probably one of the most adventurous 3 years I've
So
had.
it sounded like it was a continuous safari, almost.
Yeah, almost.
Wasn't it?
But there were some times, like one time we only had radio communications. Satellites were not prevalent at that time, so we used HF communications and encryption to deal with Europe and to deal with other major bases in Africa.
Yeah.
And one night I got what they call a flash message in that I had to get to Khartoum as quickly as I could.
Wow.
And I didn't know what the heck was going on, so I said, all right, I'm on my way. So I grabbed my passport, and at that time the World Health Organization, the WHO, had a yellow shot record that you had to carry with you at all times.
Sure, I remember hearing about that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Now you don't, but
No,
back then you did.
fortunately you don't.
Yeah.
But so I was going from Bujumbura. I flew into Nairobi, and I was going to catch another plane onto Khartoum, and I got flagged by this African. He says, "Hey, your plague shot is overdue." And it's a 10-year shot. And I said, how much overdue? Oh, a couple of months. I said, okay, I'll take care of that when I get back wherever. He said, no, we're quarantining you.
Oh, no.
I said, no, that's how much money would it cost me to get a stamp in my World Health Organization shot record? He said, no, we don't do that. And I said, well, I've got to go to the embassy. I said, how about if I do this? How about if I give you my passport and shot record, let me go to the embassy, and I'll come back tomorrow and collect it. He said, okay. And of course, I gave him some dollars in the passport too.
Yeah.
So that was in the late afternoon, so I figured he wouldn't be working the next morning. So I went in real early, and I saw that he had flagged my passport and put it in a little box with a little sticker on it.
Yeah.
And so I went back in, and I said, oh, I lost my passport. Could I go see if it's in your lost and found thing? Because I'd been in and out of the place many times. And they said, sure, go look. So I went and I took my passport and just left.
Oh, thank God.
But the problem is...
Did you get out?
Yeah,
That's
but the problem is before he took my shot record and passport to keep, he said, I still have to give you a shot. I said, well, can I wait on that? It's 10 years in between. He said, no. So here I am in a little room with a refrigerator that had a few vials of I don't know what in it, and a needle that for sure it had just been cleaned, but it wasn't a new needle. So I said, okay, give me my shot. And he did. He shot me in the butt with this hopefully plague vaccine. And I worried for years what's going to happen from that. But I took the shot because I had to get to Khartoum to see what was going on and why would they get me up there.
Yeah.
So that was my horror story that I haven't told too many people about going through customs and
now,
immigration.
I've been scared on that.
I haven't told you
that would have just scared the hell out of me. Yeah. What are you giving me? That's the next question.
Yeah. There was not a lot of medical in Burundi either.
Yeah.
And when I was in Asia, before that, we had to take hydrochloroquine, which they said you couldn't take for COVID.
Right.
We took that all the time in Asia to keep from getting malaria. It was like taking an aspirin.
Well, let me think about that. Who knew, right? You knew.
I knew. So it keeps you from getting malaria. But however, when I got to Africa, I read that it affects your memory. And so I quit taking it.
Yeah.
And guess what? I got malaria.
Did you really?
It was pretty bad. And then probably 6 or 8 months later, I got dengue fever, which is like malaria, but you get your chills and fevers at different times of the day or night.
Wow.
And we had one old doctor down there, a Belgian, that would, they called him up because I was turning blue with freezing, but yet I was sweating and my temperature was going crazy. And he had a bunch of pills with a skull and crossbones on it. And
out of the frying pan into the fire,
I said, that doesn't mean health in my language.
Wow.
So he gave me these, and he said he'll come back in 8 hours and something. And that, I thought I was slipping away. I knew that if I took this second round of that, I'd probably be dead. So I didn't take those, and I just sweated through it.
Yeah.
And I got better in about a week.
Oh,
Just drinking
my
liquids.
God.
But anyway, you're subject to things like malaria, dengue fever, whatever else you can get down there. But you just accept that as part of the game, and hopefully you go down there when you're in good health and can
Yeah.
overcome that stuff.
I would think so. Well, Kenya, Tanzania, you went to Somalia also?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it where they had the pirate and they had the guy was,
Well, they had Black Hawk Down
that's
there.
it, Black Hawk Down. Yeah.
Yeah, a friend of mine was in on that.
Really?
Colonel Lee Van Arsdale. And he was, they even made a movie about that. He was directing parts of that. He's a great guy. He's leading the Delta forces down there.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Well, I'd like to
actually,
be able to
another
talk more about
famous
that,
person
too.
in Vegas is General Buck Bedard.
I'd like to talk to him too, find out,
Okay.
see if we
He
can
was
put him in
leading.
one
He
of our
was
shows.
leading the Rangers, and I mean, these people, they're amazing. They're amazing warriors to do what they do in these situations. So anyway, there's a lot of things in Vegas that we can talk about.
Well,
Lee moved to Colorado, so
Did he?
he's
But you've
enjoying
got
it.
some people in Vegas that were really involved in all this, don't you?
Right. I'll be hopefully
Yeah.
a chance that we can show what they did and everything
I'd like
on
that.
some future shows here, because if this is interesting, and you all have to do the like and subscribe stuff
Yeah,
too, so we'll know
absolutely.
that it's okay. But we can bring in a lot of talent, local talent of very high interest, I think, to most people out there.
Well, I'd like that, Ken, I
Okay.
really, and I totally agree. Please like, subscribe, and share. Please subscribe. Let us know what your thoughts are, and if you want to hear more about this and about all the interesting people in Vegas. This is one heck of a series, so I hope you'll take us seriously and put some comments in, like, subscribe, and share. Ken and I would love that.
Thank you. This is a good therapy for me,
Yeah.
actually, this catharsis of talking about things that I've kept bottled up. See, when you're undercover, I was undercover for 27 years, although different covers.
Yeah.
And then when I retired, President Clinton said, okay, agency people can retire open. Open means they just forget that you had a cover, and they said they can roll that back to day one. I didn't agree with that, because how can
No.
you all of a sudden be CIA when you've been all these other things and exposing other people to different things that have helped us? So for the first few years after I went, quote, open, I just still couldn't say the words.
No.
And
We'd be scared
so now
somebody's going to shoot you, for
so
God's sakes.
so many years have gone by and everything now that I feel good being able to talk about
Yeah,
it. And
well, that's what I want to
later-
hear. I'm sure
later
our
on-
audience wants to hear all about that's my cup of tea, Ken.
Okay.
I really like to read books and see movies about this and really listen to the documentaries and find out what really happened. I mean, to me,
Well,
that's a big
later
deal.
on, we're going to get into, I think, some more of the nitty gritty.
Okay.
Right now, I think that this is good to just give a background.
Yeah, I
what
think
do
so,
people
too.
who go overseas to work for their government in a covert capacity,
Like
what do they
undercover.
do when they're not being covert? What
Right.
do you do, like, as you mentioned before, for recreation? What
Yeah.
did you eat and stuff like
Yeah.
that? So it's good to remember those things.
Yeah.
And then we can get into some of the other stuff later within parameters.
Yeah. Well, I'd like that, Ken. I
Okay.
really would. I'm excited about this. I hope you guys are too, because you're part of the audience and you're part of the show. So again, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. We truly appreciate it. That's our show for today, and we'll see you soon. Take care.
Adios.